Hello, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time and we appreciate your interest and support of Actichem, and we appreciate your support in relation to this new project, new product which we're bringing across to Australia. The whole concept of strip and seals and coatings and sealers on floors has, for a long time, I thought there has to be a better way to do it. We've got contractors and facility managers putting a huge amount of time into strip and seal procedures, sometimes as often as 3 months doing a complete strip and seal, many times every 6 months. And I've wondered for a long time, there has to be a better way of maintaining hard floors rather than constantly reapplying a translucent coating of plastic on the floor. Well, we're very, very excited to be able to introduce you to this new micron sealer range, and we've got this webinar dedicated to it. So we'll be uncovering exactly how NeverStrip can help your business, help your contracting business, and how such a small change can save literally millions in facility floor care. So looking forward to going through this. Neil?
Yeah, thanks very much. The NeverStrip range of floor coatings has been an absolute revolution in the industry. It's totally going to revolutionize the way that we do strip and seals here in Australia. And today we've got with us the founders and technical experts of NeverStrip to help us fully understand this amazing product. We've got David and Kevin and Bob. David, would you like to introduce yourselves to us?
Welcome. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of the co-founders of NeverStrip back in 2012, and we're absolutely thrilled to be on this webinar. We're thrilled to be partnering up with Actichem and bringing the micron sealer technology and products to the Australian market.
Thank you very much, David. That's awesome. One of the key products of the NeverStrip is their micron sealers range. And I'm going to call on Kevin. Kevin, give us a quick introduction to yourself and tell us what makes these sealers so special.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kevin Richardson. I'm the technical director at NeverStrip. So you've seen the word, or probably come across the word micron or micron sealers. So that word is derived and related to the thinness of the sealers. So this product is applied at 557 square feet, or sorry, 557 square meters. I reverted to Canadian denominations there, sorry. 557 square meters per gallon per coat, resulting in a film thickness of about 1.65 microns. So at 3 applications, we're actually just under 5 microns of thinness. Now, to give that context, a human hair is between 50 and 70 microns. So, you know, we're at about a tenth the thickness of a human hair. And I think we have a additional slide to pull up on this one. So this is our stone terrazzo and concrete seal at Chicago O'Hare Airport. So this would, I would say, be one of the top 3 busiest airports in the US. So it's been down in this concourse for 2+ years without a new application and with no stripping. So after 2 years, and Dave can contest to this, he's been in there quite recently, or attest to this, I should say. This actually looks as good as the day it was applied with no new applications.
Right. Their maintenance on this floor consists of frequent auto scrubbing using a diamond encrusted pad from NeverStrip, followed by weekly burnishing. And that has kept this floor looking just as you see it, consistently, with a consistent appearance for nearly 2 years.
That is amazing, David. Is that just for those of us in Australia? O'Hare Airport, what city is that? That's quite a major airport, is it?
That's Chicago's airport.
Wow, that's incredible. So we're probably looking at, probably 100,000 passengers through there per day, I would imagine, if it's anything similar to, I think that's what Melbourne is, so it would have to be at least that.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really interesting. David, can you just take us through as to just the basics of these micron sealers and the whole reason why they never need to be stripped? So the name NeverStrip is an interesting name, run us through as to why this is.
Sure. Well, there's three core reasons. The first core reason is the sealers are very dense, hard, and we've come up with the term soil phobic. We believe this technology actually repels the soil. And so soil stays on the surface. It's not getting embedded into the sealer as it does with traditional floor finish. The second reason is the micron sealers do not yellow. Now we know this definitively by the picture you see. So that we have a customer in Hawaii that's been applying these sealers for over 8 years, principally outdoors, and there's been no yellowing. In addition to that, it rains every day in Hawaii, and the product has performed beautifully. And then the third,
it doesn't come up with any white blotches then when it gets wet, does it, David?
It does not. The sealer doesn't want to be submerged for long periods of time, but it doesn't mind being wet and then drying, being wet and then drying.
Brilliant.
And then the third reason why the micron sealers do not need to be stripped is because they're just incredibly continuously refreshable with very standard floor care practices. So you have a continuously refreshed surface, removing the soils, buffing out the surface scratches, and if properly maintained, the sealer is not degrading.
That's a big one, Dave. And some stage between you and Kevin, can we just touch on that very briefly? We've had some instances where there's been scratches on sealers, and that's one of the first questions as to how it's going to be repaired. It's very, very difficult to do so on your regular polymer acrylics. So that's a huge one for us.
So a good case study for this question is a customer we have in downtown Chicago, where they maintain 35,000 square feet of 120-year-old granite that has the micron sealers on it. And this particular venue is extremely brutal, with large parties on a nightly basis or frequent basis, with extensive scratching going on, lots of staining from red wine and coffee, etc. And what the contractor does on a nightly basis after the parties is they turn the lights on at 1 o'clock in the morning, they walk around, they look for stains, they look for scratching, and they, on a localized basis, with a floor machine, with a diamond pad with water, they buff out the scratch and they work out the stain. And even if they need to put some product in a localized area, when they end up burnishing the whole floor, it all blends out and they're on to the next day.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Really, really appreciate that.
Can I add something real quick in there?
Carry on, Kevin.
So just further to what Dave was saying, and let's say there was a case of somebody's dragged something ridiculous across the floor, like a refrigerator with a metal leg or what have you, and they've actually gone through the sealer. They're actually able to, what we call, locally repair that, where they can go in and let's say it's even gone as far down as the granite itself. They can go in, they can remove the sealer, they can do some diamond work locally on that area that's affected, reapply the sealer to that area, burnish the whole floor, and the whole thing will blend.
Yeah, that's unreal. That's unreal. That certainly answers a lot of questions. I really appreciate that input.
Hey, Everard, I think I missed one of my cues, and I just want to backtrack just a second.
Yes,
with a
carry
little
on.
bit more background about the micron sealers.
Yes, please do.
They're water-based, they're solvent-free, and they're PFAS-free. They're an inorganic-based product. So one way of thinking of this product, this sealer, this micron thin sealer, it's analogous to putting a very thin layer of flexible stone on the floor. So for all practical purposes, the ongoing maintenance is analogous to a stone floor.
Excellent.
And that's what Kevin and I have been chatting about here just in the last couple of moments, about the repairability and the refreshability.
Yeah, thank you very much. That makes it very clear, very helpful. Thank you very much for that, Dave.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'll just chime in on this slide here where we're discussing the whole labor comparison when it comes to the NeverStrip products. This is probably one of the areas that I've been the most amazed by in the introduction of the NeverStrip products is just their ability to save in labor. And I'll get Kevin and Bob to go over this, but the thing that I'd love them to place a focus on as well in this is that when you're using NeverStrip, not having to strip coatings it's an incredible labor saving. And if you take an example of Melbourne Airport, for example, if you were to seal that floor and then have to strip that coating in a year's time, that coating removal process will take you almost twice as long as the original application of the poor quality sealer. Kevin
Sure.
and Bob, can you run us through some of the key factors of how the NeverStrip sealers save in the labor component for us there?
Sure. Yeah. So just kind of to put more words to the numbers that you're seeing here, essentially, like, what does it look like? So you're completely eliminating any stripping activity from your ongoing floor care at this point once you put the micron sealer down. There's far fewer applications over the lifetime. So if you just look at the two examples we've spoken about already, O'Hare Airport, they've gone 2 years. They've not put a new application down. In the case of the Old Chicago Post Office, they were 18 months before they put a new application down. And again, no stripping, cleaned up the floor, burnished it, put a new application down. So less burnishing to maintain shine. Again, in the case of the O'Hare Airport, they're burnishing that floor once a week. You got better stain resistance, and again, the spot repairs or even, having to go down, like we were saying, to the stone and reapply are actually doable, where you don't have to do an entire room or hallway or what have you.
And I just might add, another critical point is that the sealers dry in 10 minutes. So you don't have that long wait time in between applications. It goes down very quickly. It dries and you can walk on it in 10 minutes.
That is an absolute game changer, Bob. I'm so glad you brought that in, because the time saved for a busy contractor in being able to do a complete sealer application in under an hour, depending on the area, of course. But that 10-minute dry time is genuine, and it's incredible time saving, considering a typical acrylic polymer can take up to 2 hours to dry in poor conditions and then another 12 hours to cure.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the key things about that, Bob, and I'm glad you bring it in, is a lot of these guys are putting down their sealers at night time, often between 12 midnight and 4 a.m. in the morning. And so you've got a very limited time that you can actually do this work. For these guys to be able to complete a whole huge section of flooring is an absolute saving, meaning whether have had to previously come back maybe 2-3 nights in a row, sometimes with extended travel times, if they're doing it out regionally. Now they're able to just do the whole lot in one night. That is certainly a game changer for a lot of these contractors.
Right.
That's excellent.
How long are they generally needing to wait before they could burnish the finish, the traditional finish?
It'd often be a couple of hours, 2, 3, 4 hours. Sometimes they would burnish in between coats, but yeah, certainly you'd want to leave it a couple of hours, depending on atmospheric conditions, essentially.
In reality, Mr. David, what typically happens is, because the application process takes so long, it's often opening time by the time they've let it dry. And so they'll typically do their first burnish the following night. So typically speaking, it drags over to the following night.
Yeah. The micron sealers generally can be burnished 30 minutes after the application.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that with us.
And I might just add too, there's very, very little, if any, burnishing dust at all. So that's not going to be an issue if perhaps you're doing a grocery store and you're worried about burnishing dust getting on the products. It's not going to be an issue with the micron sealers.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and that makes a big difference in areas that are that have in-house patients or in hospitality settings. So that's very important. Kevin, you ran us through a case study just recently at the Montana convenience store. Would you Would you care to share a bit of details with us? Because that was a real life application. That'll be interesting.
Sure. So this is, I don't know how many would be familiar with the area, but this is, it's called a Zip Trip. So it's a convenience store right at the, I believe the east entrance of Glacier National Park. So it's an extremely busy convenience store that's attached to a gas bar. I would call the floor care program one that's entitled On Demand. We probably all know those types of floor care programs. So essentially, initially this was maintained with floor finish, and our customer, or before he became our customer, was going in and just having to essentially strip this down every single time because it was just so beat up. So this is typically going close to 18 months between services. So full transparency, it's still getting beat up. 18 months is a long time to go between getting a machine on the floor, and right, we all know that. But what he's able to do now is go in, and funny enough, the first time he was going in to reservice this after they had done the application, 18 months had passed. He called me up and he said, I'm going to have to strip this floor, aren't I, Kevin? So anyways, I said, no, you're not. Just do your deep clean, do the floor with a green pad and a good cleaner. And then on that area that's really abused, which is essentially that photo on the left, that's where the carts always come in and out. So that was trashed. So he was able to go over that area, that aisle, with an EPP pad, dry, clean up the residue, reapply 2 applications just there, burnish the whole store. And he said his service is now 3 hours to do that store. And again, obviously he's eliminated the stripping component.
Kevin, do you know what a service was before with the floor finish? How long it would take him?
I believe it was right around 7 to 8 hours. And
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent, Kevin. And just before we hop onto the slide, we will talk about some of the application processes there. Again, the couple of questions that have come up since we've been on this is, if for some reason, you need to strip the product, as you say, it can be stripped, but it never needs to be. So it's very, very rare in those cases. But in avoiding using strippers, typically coating removal products are very dangerous and create fumes and can damage other surfaces like those furnishings that you see in that store there. So avoiding the use of them is a major bonus.
Yeah. Well, and I would add the other thing that happens if a store ever goes to sort of change the footprint of the store, they start moving these displays around. They've got rust right all around. They've got floor finish pulled, stripper pulled underneath of those areas, and that, like, all that gets eliminated.
The stripping process of removing the micron sealers, there's 2 methods. One, you can abrade it off if it's on an appropriate flooring surface, like concrete or a natural stone or a terrazzo, if you wanted to do it that way. And the other way is you can remove it with a high quality floor finish stripper and you just simply need to provide more dwell time. So multiply the dwell time by about 3 or 4, and then you don't need much of an aggressive pad. Something as simplistic as a green pad with the proper dwell time will remove the product.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. I think we're very much going to find some interest in how this product is applied then.
We'll get Kevin to run over this slide, seeing as he's the star of the show in the video.
So this is on 12-inch by 12-inch tile, or a foot by a foot. Regardless of whether we're putting it on stone, terrazzo, concrete, tile, vinyl, rubber, you name it, the application is really the same across the board. I would say ridiculously simplistic, particularly once you get the knack of it. If we can roll the video, I'll just sort of talk over it. So ideally, it's applied in about a 3-foot by 6-foot section. If you count the number of times I sort of pulled the trigger and created that line of product across the floor, I pulled it 5 times, which is representative of one trigger pull per pad length. So that pad fits across a 6-foot length 5 times. And then all I'm doing is I've also pre-dampened that microfiber pad with the product. And then I'm just going up once, down once, move over, up once, down once, move over. And that's essentially the application. And you can sort of see the 3 foot by 6 foot section. I come down like 3 or 4 inches or 8 to 10 centimeters into that next area. So there's a slight overlap there.
And I would just add that we typically tell our new customers when they're just getting started that there's really two things you can do wrong with our sealers. One is that you apply it too heavy, you're putting too much product on the floor, and two is you play with it too much.
Yeah.
So, Kevin's not going over this multiple times. He's simply going up and back and moving over. So if you keep those two things in mind, the application process is almost foolproof.
Right. Bob's point are perfect. The way that you know if you're putting too much product down is when you spread it, it's still white. So when you spread it, the product is white, but when you spread it, it instantly becomes clear.
Yeah.
And if it's white after you've spread it, the product is basically telling you put too much on.
Okay, that helps. That's very simple. I guess that's probably the one thing that I've really battled to get my head around is how simple it is. For a product of this quality, given these capabilities, you honestly would have thought it was going to be a lot more difficult and a lot more time consuming. So this is an absolute killer.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll throw something.
Let me just say that this, you can see how thin this is going down. So this is, you can translate it into meters. This is 6,000 square feet per gallon per coat. And
yeah, that coverage is incredible. That's the one thing that actually probably leads us on to the next slide in relation to the cost analysis of it. Is the coverage that you get from each coat is quite incredible. You want to introduce us to the slide?
Yeah, the initial cost of the product is obviously more expensive, as you would appreciate the value in it. There's obviously a lot more value packed in each one of those bottles, and the initial cost of the bottle is more expensive. Of course, one thing that we all understand with these floor coatings is that it's a whole system. We've got a lot of labor, which is a huge component of the cost, and then of course there's a lot of the time for stripping and associated chemicals and the removal of the slurry, and then there's a lot of the straight labor cost, which is a huge thing. So the value that we're able to pack into that bottle is tremendous in being able to minimize everything else around that makes up that cost of strip and seals. So although the initial cost is more expensive, what we've worked out is, assuming that you are stripping and sealing that floor, say every 6 months in a busy facility, pretty much after about 13 months, you've equaled cost on the whole thing, and often earlier than that. And after that, the savings are just exponential. So the savings become huge when you start looking at second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year. So maybe you can just run us through a little bit of that, Kevin. You've had a lot more experience on the cost saving side of it. Just run us through that diagram there.
Yeah, well, I would say just very, very condensed, and you've already touched on it. You're saving on labor, less material, less time. And one of the things I like about it, even on top of those great items, are you have a consistently better looking floor, right?
Yeah.
So you have all those benefits, but for the customer, they have a floor that doesn't have this drop off, like you do with floor finish, where, I don't know how many times I've gone into the Walmart over here. They've done fresh floor finish. I'll go in 3 days later and I can see the middle of the aisle is already starting to dull out, right? You don't get that drop off with the micron sealers.
That's excellent. Did you have a couple of case studies? I remember you talking to us. It'd be nice if you could bring up that photo of the post office that Dave referenced earlier on. Yeah, talk us over this one.
So this is such a good example of the micron sealers in a very demanding environment. And Dave touched on this already, but this facility they are meticulous about the appearance of this floor. And I mean, obviously it shows in this photo here, but they'll have parties in here like six or seven nights a week. Stuff gets dropped, stuff gets dragged, and they'll walk the floor, after close 1 o'clock every night, and they'll look for problem areas, whether it's a stain or scratch or what have you. And in most cases, they're getting out a 175 RPM floor machine, a 3,500 grit pad with water, and that's how they're removing the bulk of the stains and scratches. And if need be, as we mentioned, if it's a severe scratch that's getting right through the sealer and onto the floor, it's a little bit more involved. But again, it's all done just locally, and then the room is burnished and everything blends in.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Let me
awesome,
just comment.
Kevin.
Let me comment about this floor. The way they polished it, they went down to 30 grit diamonds and then brought it back up to 1600 to start. So they had a highly polished floor, and then they put our sealer on top, and then they burn it. And then from then on, for the next year and a half, all they did was this spot activity that we've discussed, and they burnish it nightly with a ride-on burnisher.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Dave. There was another very good case study of the Victoria College, which showed us some very good instances of money saving.
So,
go ahead, Dave.
Kevin, go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
Well, okay. See, the thing is, we all love talking about this one because it's so awesome. But essentially, this floor is almost at the 10-year mark without putting any new product down, which is amazing. But these guys are literally our poster child for maintenance of the sealer. They're using our cleaner. They're using our Micron Restore, which has elements of the sealer in it, and they're using the proper pads on it. So this facility kind of shows what's possible if you sort of, follow the maintenance to the letter. Dave's laughing at me. I can see it.
Yeah.
No. This is 33,000 square feet of LVT that was installed 9.5 years ago. And the Micron sealers were put on top of the LVT immediately after the installation of the floor. This school is outside of Houston, Texas, and it is the proof of what's possible with 4,000 students. It's the proof of what's possible with this technology if it's maintained in a proper way.
I'd actually add also the reason it was first sealed with the vinyl seal was there was actually a dye lot issue with the sheen on the LVT.
Interesting.
So the proper
That's correct. And go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead. Explain it.
The proper prep with some EPP pads, the application of the sealer corrected that issue, and then they've obviously properly maintained it moving forward.
And the key component there is that they haven't had to strip that floor in 7 years. So
they haven't reapplied product in 7 years also.
Yeah.
There's been no new applications of product applied onto this flooring, 33,000 square feet with 4,000 students in 9.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And just before we move on to actually talking about these various different micron sealers, I'll just add the point in not having to reapply, but also not having to strip means that the whole process becomes a lot more eco-friendly, a lot more friendly to the environment, which can be a key component in how these contractors can win over businesses, especially for larger companies. Let's have a look at the various different products then.
Yeah, so just to introduce this slide very briefly before I get input from the NeverStrip team, obviously there's a product for every application, and it's very important to remember that specific areas require specific treatments. And as you can see there, we've got the different products there: the rubber seal, the stone terrazzo and concrete seal, the vinyl seal, the wood and cork seal, and the tile seal. And the other thing that's obviously very important is that there's 3 sheens available in each of these products. So I'll get the one of the team to run through them, but we have the lower satin sheen, and then the regular sheen, and then the gloss. Run us through how those three sheens are achieved.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So the first two are what we refer to as out of the bottle, right? So the lower satin sheen vinyl seal is that product. The regular sheen vinyl seal, that's the original formula. And then to create a higher gloss level, the regular sheen is burnished, ideally with a diamond pad for the highest gloss.
Yeah, that's excellent. Maybe if we can just go back to those products there, probably what'll work the best is if we just touch on a few of those products individually with some case studies attached to them. Kevin, maybe you can talk to the rubber seal for us. That looks like a gym in the background of that picture there.
Yeah, so that was a workout room. This gym actually on the right, this was a community gymnasium at it's native reservations in reservation in Arizona. They were having problems cleaning the rubber floor, keeping it clean, and the other complaint was attraction. So our customer went in. I believe they had done a demo somewhere else at one of the other facilities for them. They were quite happy with it. So they suggested that they go in. They did a very aggressive cleaning on this floor. They actually did all of it with enhanced prep pads, which is pretty aggressive for rubber. So it looked pretty dry and patchy by the time they were done. They ended up doing 4 applications of the sealer, and that the amount of cleaning contributed to the number of applications they required. But after 4 applications, the photo on the right shows what they ended up with. And then the feedback from the facility has been, you know what, all the problems were solved. We're able to clean it. We're able to keep it clean, and the traction is much more superior compared to the original product.
That's awesome. Next product I thought we might have a chat about is what we shorten to STC, the stone terrazzo and concrete seal. I know Dave is relatively proud of this product. Dave, you tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So on the left is a marble floor that was done up in Canada, and they treated it with a couple of different grits of diamond pads with a floor machine, and then applied the stone terrazzo concrete seal, probably 2 or 3 applications, which is the norm. And then 30 minutes after the last application, they burnished it with our burnishing pad, which is an 8,000 grit pad. And so that's what's on the left. On the right is a sandstone floor where there was floor finish. On the left side is the floor without any floor finish, and then on the right is after 4 applications of the stone terrazzo concrete seal, the lower satin version of the product.
It really brings out the colors, doesn't it? And just on those floors very quickly, before you applied the STC, would you apply the Density Prime, David, to provide a base for that?
The Density Prime is a micron product for application onto porous cementitious surfaces.
Yes.
So both of these, especially the one on the right, would have been a candidate for the Density Prime. I'm not sure if the contractor did that, but generally speaking, what one would do there on the right is 2 applications of the Density Prime product, which would go down at a heavier rate than the wear layer sealer, and then 2 applications of the stone terrazzo concrete seal.
Yeah, that's really good, Dave. Just one other question just before we move on there. Lovely shiny floors, but what about the slip rating?
Well, we just had some independent testing done, and the coefficient of friction or the slip rating, both using what's here in North America, the BOT 3000E machine, and then also using the pendulum method, the results were quite favorable. I think you all have done some testing with the pendulum testing method, and maybe you could share your result.
Yeah, we have. It's truly amazing. Neil, just summarize. You're in charge of that.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible because we did some testing on a terrazzo floor, And we obviously like to use the wet pendulum test, but just as well the dry test. The terrazzo floor actually produced a poor result dry in its natural state, and we improved the slip resistance by applying the stone terrazzo and concrete seal by a whole point, which is an amazing result for that. So,
which is an absolute winner for these busy public facilities, of course.
we've touched on the vinyl seal a couple of times already, Kevin, but I think we had a case study that we talked about earlier. Run us through some of the benefits that we've seen on these two vinyl jobs here.
Yeah, so the floor on the left, that would be similar to, identical to actually what was in that Montana Zip Trip store. So that's a VCT. So again, they've been able to eliminate stripping of any sort and reduce the amount of when they would do new applications, scrub recoats, all that kind of good stuff, and also keep a more consistent appearance to the floor. The one on the right, the facility was actually looking at replacing that floor. So it was between a tenant turnover. I believe that was that in Arizona, Dave?
No, Dallas,
Dallas?
Texas. Yeah,
okay.
office building. The various trades, they did not protect the LVT during their work. And so the solution was an aggressive treatment of the LVT with what we refer to as enhanced prep pads or surface prep pads, which is a burgundy pad that's about a 200 grit. And so that was used to help reduce the edging of the surface scratches. In some respects, actually can make the floor look more ugly than when you start at times. And then probably in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 applications of the vinyl seal product, in this case, it was the lower satin sheen version, was applied to the floor, which greatly enhanced and improved and gave the floor a new life.
Yeah.
So a good rule of thumb to keep in mind there, because it's kind of come up twice, with that rubber floor where it was aggressively cleaned with an EPP pad. And then we have this LVT that was, heavily conditioned with an EPP pad. Kind of keep in mind that the more you do or the more aggressive you are with the floor, probably 1 or 2 more applications than you would typically do.
That's excellent. The next product that I'd like to get the team to run through is the one that's completely changed the narrative in our office here. Is we would get phone calls every day, people wanting to seal ceramic and wanting to seal porcelain. And you can't do that until NeverStrip came along. And we've had to completely change our way of thinking, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm having to go back in a lot of my words, but tell us why.
So the nature of the micron sealers do not require a mechanical bond to adhere to a surface, right? It's more at a molecular level. And so that's the first hurdle. How do you adhere to it? After we get the adhesion, I was in a conference and there was somebody from a ceramic porcelain manufacturer, and I referenced the fact that our tile seal product is used on ceramic and porcelain floors. And she said, well, why would anybody want to put a sealer on such a floor? And I said, well, the 3 most common reasons that we hear is it's easier to clean, particularly if that floor is textured. It's oftentimes an improvement to the traction, and oftentimes it enriches the colors and makes the floor more beautiful. And I think these 2 pictures illustrate that.
Yeah, that's excellent, Dave. And I've done some testing of this myself. We've applied this to some porcelains and some ceramics. There's no issue with the adhesion, and you get a very, very easy to clean finish. We in Australia here, a very popular range of porcelain tiles is what they call an outdoor non-slip porcelain tile. And the first thing they do is they tear mops and things like that to shreds, and they're impossible to clean. And the application of the NeverStrip tile seal literally transforms that without compromising the traction. So speaking of traction, might be good to go to the slide on the liquid grip. Liquid grip is an awesome introduction to the range that I see as an absolute game changer in the field of actually achieving good slip ratings. In Australia, we use the pendulum tests. We've achieved a P5 on the liquid grip, and I'll get Kevin to run us through how the how the actual product works and tell us a little bit about that pull surround too, Kev.
Sure. So unlike, essentially we have two methods, right? If we're trying to deal with a traction issue, we're either going to etch the surface or we're adding some type of a sealer or coating with an aggregate in it. So the cool thing about the micron sealers, or sorry, about the liquid grip, is because the micron sealers themselves are so thin, an extremely small aggregate is added that creates the traction. So you can walk across a pool deck like this in your bare feet, and you can feel that there's something there, and you have a sure grip, but it's not uncomfortable even in bare feet. So the actual application is just a matter of doing a good clean on the tile and grout, picking up that, rinsing and extracting. Once that's dry, you're doing one application of the appropriate micron seal, in this case tile seal, and then you essentially roll on the following two products. There is a method involved that I won't get into here, but it's essentially a dip and roll method of applying the two steps. So you're able to address traction issues specifically in wet areas. It's fast. You got in between the step 1 and step 2 is a 25-minute dry time. And moving forward, it's very easy to maintain with the appropriate cleaners and brushes. Ideally, a light brush is used to maintain the surface afterwards.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate that, Kevin. And I guess one of the key things there as well is we've been very used to micro etching to achieve these slip ratings, whereas now we're completely stepping away from that to enable us to be able to use this very, very professional method. What's the story behind this? Just before and after pictures.
So you want to go ahead, Dave?
Sure, I'll chime in. This is a pool deck at a Lifetime Fitness health facility, which is a nationwide chain of health clubs in the Detroit, Michigan area. And this was done about 2 years ago now. They auto scrub the surface on a daily basis with a soft brush. And they've gone 2 years without any new application of product. And the Lifetime Fitness people are very pleased with the performance.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Thank you very much for that, Dave. I'd have to say that you guys must get used to what it feels like to win, and that's what it's all about, being able to win these contracts and win these applications. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate what you said to us, and all those various case studies brings it to life for us. Probably the one last thing from me is just the tendency to want to compare it to regular floor sealers, whereas this is a completely new system, a complete game changer. So thank you very much. We thank everybody for their time. We've got quite a few questions that have come through, which we're going to answer some of the key ones. And for the rest of them, we'll put them through into the white paper.
One question that does come up there is, do you have to, question is saying, do you have to strip the existing coating first before applying NeverStrip? One of the team, tell us a little bit about, give us an answer to that.
Well, now that's a trick question. Yes and no is the answer, actually. So if it's floor finish, yes, you want to completely remove any existing floor finish. On top of other types of coatings, be it urethanes, epoxies, these types of coatings, the sealer is actually being applied on top of those coatings to make those coatings easier to maintain. Because when those coatings scratch or become dull or what have you, they're, oftentimes it's a matter of having to screen or whatever. And the process is much bigger than having to just maintain our sealer on top of those products.
Okay.
Let me follow up and just mention the why that we want to remove the floor finish. The primary why is because over time, it's likely the floor finish will amber or yellow. It's not that it's not that the micron sealer can't be applied on top of the floor finish. It can. It will adhere and all that. But why do you want to do that and then some number of years later have to remove it because the floor finish underneath is yellowing?
Yeah, I guess just hearing you speak, David, it makes sense in a sense that what we're doing now is we're putting forward a protection on that floor, a coating on that floor, which is a long-term protection. This is not something that is just simply being put on there for the next 6 months or the next 12 months. This is something that we expect to last for years. So obviously the surface preparation really is very, very important and needs to be solid and reliable in itself, which a regular acrylic floor polymer is not. It's not designed to last for that long. Right. A urethane or a polyurethane may be, certainly an advantage in that regard, but certainly any regular acrylic floor polymer needs to be removed. Yeah, fully agree.
That's excellent. Another question that was asked is, with regular acrylic, you should not apply sealer if the temperature is under 10 degrees Celsius. How does that apply with NeverStrip? So for friends who work with the antiquated system of Fahrenheit and things like that, I'm going to leave the conversion to either you or them.
What's 10 degrees centigrade in Fahrenheit? Dave, you'll be able to answer. Well, just tell us what happens in cold weather. In any case, you got colder weather than we have, so we won't worry about the conversion.
I'm the wrong
right
person
now.
to ask that question. So it's a water-based product, so we don't want temperatures anywhere less than 45 Fahrenheit, in that range.
Which I believe
that is 8, Celsius. 8?
Around 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, you could apply this at 100-degree temperature Fahrenheit, which is 32 Celsius, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good.
It just will dry faster. It will dry faster.
Yeah, sure.
And so you would need to be on top of the game.
Yeah. Yep. We've touched on this already, but just a question in relation to internal or external use. Can it be used externally? UV resistant, and you're happy with that?
Yes, it can absolutely be used indoors or outdoors.
Yep, very good.
It can be put on any surface other than carpet or textiles. So, for example, Kevin had a customer in Calgary 6, 8, 9 months ago that applied it onto glass stairs.
That's crazy. Awesome. The other question that is it's come up, we possibly got time for this one and maybe just one more. If there is any moisture in the substrate being sealed, what problems can that cause? Any water-based floor coating that I've used will not go clear if moisture is present. That's a good question.
It's a great question. The feedback that we've gotten from customers where I've talked to them over the years, where they know a particular surface had a water problem underneath, that where they knew that there was an issue, and they applied our micron sealer and no issue resulted. So we've had many instances of this, and so we absolutely believe that the micron sealers will allow the water vapor to go through them.
Okay, so ideally you want to apply the product to a dry surface. That's the laboratory standard. But if there is some residual moisture in the surface, it's not going to create a crisis. That's very good.
It never has. We've not, in 12 years since we brought the product out to the market, we've not had one instance of that problem.
That's awesome.
Okay, very interesting.
Perhaps just got time for one last question.
If applying to a floor following polished products, how meticulous does a stripping of that previous finish need to be?
Kevin?
Sorry, to clarify the polished products.
So if a floor has got an acrylic floor polymer applied or floor polish applied to the floor, how thoroughly does that floor polish need to be removed before the application of the NeverStrip?
So what we'll typically say for transitioning from floor finish to the micron sealers, that 125% effort is required in removing the floor finish.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah, we want all the floor finish off the floor to give a nice end product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So preparation really is everything. And as I said before, one of the key things to remember is that we're not just applying something which is going to be lasting for the next 6-12 months. We're putting something on the floor that is a long-term protection for that floor extending into years. So we can afford to put that 125% effort in. So that's a good answer, Kevin. Love that. So thank you very much. We're going to have to call it time, and we will add in any of the questions that we haven't managed to answer. We'll add them into the white paper, and we'd like to extend a very grateful thank you to Dave Beattie and Kevin Richardson and Bob for helping us along, their support and their ongoing support. And thank you very much for everybody that joined us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks to everyone who joined. Appreciate it.
Thank you.